I don't need validation from Sky Daddy.
Well, I agree. You don't need. I agree. I don't need validation from Sky Daddy either. But if there is a God who loves you, if there is a God who created you to spend eternity with him in heaven, if there is a God who has the solution for death, eternal life, and if his name is Jesus Christ, I think you'd be very wise to put your faith in him.
I wanted to ask is like tattoos and piercings a sin?
Good question. In Leviticus we read, don't put tattoos on your body.
Is that the Old Testament?
Exactly, it's Leviticus. Now the question is, see, what you always got to do when you interpret, you got to put it in context. So the question is, why in Leviticus would it say that tattoos are bad? All you got to do is read Elijah on Mount Carmel, competing against the prophets of Baal. God sent fire, and the people of Israel are watching, and they're seeking to determine who's the real true living God, Baal or Yahweh. The prophets of Baal pray, Baal, send fire. Baal, send fire. Nothing happens. What do? They start cutting themselves. The blood begins to flow. Why? Because that culture, that religion taught, if you want to get God's attention, you start cutting yourself, let the blood flow, and then God will answer your prayers. Then God will give you his attention. That's false. And so very clearly in Leviticus, God is calling the Hebrew people to be different from all the cultures around them. And one example is tattoos, marking your body, cutting yourself. So I would argue that because that was for that culture and time, there is nothing wrong with tattoos, biblically. Similarly, in Leviticus it says, you are not to wear clothing made of different cloth. Now, why would they do something like that? I mean, what's the point? Well, the point is that in that day, there was polytheism, many gods, belief in many gods. And they would mix the gods. And what God is trying to do in the book of Leviticus for the Jews is tell them there's one God, not many. And so you're not going to mix everything together. And so therefore he says you only wear clothing of one cloth. But the second point is this. The priests did wear clothing of different cloth, linen and wool, and that's because they were priests, and they were set aside. Now, I don't know which one's the accurate explanation of why God says don't wear clothing with mixed cloth in it, okay? But you see, the point is, when you got something difficult in the Bible, and there are many difficult things in the Bible, you don't just say contradiction, big problem. Instead, you learn to study the context, the culture. So what's the point of the author? Let me give you one quick example. Genesis 1:1 says what? In the beginning, who? Gods?
God.
Gods?
God.
Real loud, brother.
God.
God. Right on, brother. Okay, now why? Why is he doing that? Oh, you see, Genesis has to answer the evolutionary question. Guess what? The author, Moses, is writing to some Jewish people poised on the border of the land of Canaan to go in and conquer it. Do you think those Jews are sitting in their tents saying, wow, give me a scientific explanation of how God created? No, that's the furthest thing from their heads. What they are faced with is there a one true living God, or are there many gods? Now, all you got to do is go to the Babylonian creation myth called the Enuma Elish. Do you know how many gods create the universe in the Enuma Elish? 9. Sun god, moon god, sky god, earth god. And Genesis 1 is saying, no, not 9 gods. In the beginning, one God creates the heavens and the earth. See, that's how you begin to understand Scripture better. Well, Cliff, I'm not a biblical scholar. You don't have to be, okay? Mark Twain said, it's not the parts of the Bible I don't understand that disturb me. It's parts of the Bible I do understand that disturb me. The Bible's real simple on the surface level. But if you're a university student and you're going to start asking hard questions, then you're going to have to study. And that's what you got to challenge people here to do. Like, I I couldn't believe earlier that woman back there was standing back there. She's gone now. But she was raining on me about the Bible, the Gospels are ahistorical. And I just simply asked her, fine, why do you say that? What's your evidence that they're not historical? She didn't answer me. Then she said, and there are a lot of contradictions in the Gospels. I said, fine, give me one. She said, well, I can't really remember one. And then she said, and there are a lot of Gospels that contradict Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And guess what? She's right. But just to make sure she's doing her homework, I asked her, really, would you please give me the name of one Gospel that contradicts Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? She couldn't do it. You see, sir, that's not fair intellectually. If you're going to say something, understand why you're saying it, what's the evidence to support it.
But didn't they say, don't mark your body with like something of death? Right? Didn't they say that in the Bible?
In Leviticus, it says, don't put tattoos on your body.
Yeah, but it also said, like, right next to it said, don't mark your body with a sign of death.
Okay.
Didn't they say that?
It might. I can't remember, to tell you the truth. I don't know. But I do know it says very clearly no tattoos. And so you're right, sir. A lot of guys come up to me and say, Cliff, does the Bible say we're not allowed to get tattoos? And I say, no. You've got to understand the context. And the context is the Canaanite religions, to get God's attention, you not only tattooed, you cut yourself. And you let the blood flow, and that's the way you're going to convince God that you're really sincere. You're really genuine. And God says, no, you don't do it that way. With your heart, you talk to me. Sincerely, genuinely, honestly, talk to me. And I'm going to listen to you. You don't have to cut yourself to get my attention.
Would you say some stuff in the Bible is false?
No, there's nothing in the Bible that I have read that's false. Now,
what about the hair, the woman's hair not being weaved, man's can't cut their hair and stuff?
Good.
What is that?
Okay, good. What is that? Do you know that several times Paul writes, greet one another with a holy kiss? Now, this is the second day Jeremiah's been out here, and Jeremiah was very positive to me yesterday. Do you think I have kissed Jeremiah yet? No. Okay. Why? Am I disobeying the Bible? No. I understand that when Paul is talking about a holy kiss, he's talking about love each other, respect each other. Now, in the culture of that day, men kissed each other. Jeremiah did not try to kiss me, and I did not try and kiss Jeremiah. Why? Because we live in a different culture. But I've got some other friends, maybe like Italian guys, and they've come up to me and they've planted a big kiss on my cheek. And I don't say, oh, that's gross, but I understand that's a cultural expression of love and respect. You got to learn to distinguish between culture, a particular expression of something, and the Bible. Every atheist friend of mine does good deeds. Every agnostic friend of mine does good deeds. Every Muslim friend of mine does good deeds. Every Buddhist friend of mine does good deeds. All of us as human beings at times do good. The question is why? My observation is it's because we human beings have a conscience, this innate moral indicator in us. Every atheist has a conscience. Every agnostic has a conscience. Every Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, Christian, Jew has a conscience. So all of us, by exercising our consciences and our rational minds, can understand there's a difference between good and evil, right and wrong. So then, Cliff, what have you been doing with a moral argument? What I've been doing, ma'am, is this. If there is no God, there is no mind prior to the human mind, be it Christian, Jew, atheist, whatever, who defines right and wrong. So it's obvious who defines right and wrong if there's no God. We do. And obviously means morality is relative, because you might define one right and wrong one way, he might define it another way, I might define it another way. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong. You choose, he chooses, and I choose. It's all relative. And I'm saying you can't live that out consistently. Why? Because if someone hurts you badly enough, you're going to look them in the face and say, you should not have done that. You ought not to have done that. And when you use those two words, should and ought, you're appealing to our conscience, which informs us that there is an objective moral. And when you just cut me off at the knees, that was really bad. Not relatively bad. When you abused that innocent child, that was really bad. Not relatively bad. When you murdered that innocent person, that was really objectively evil. Not relatively evil. See, that's the way all my atheist friends live their lives. They're very good people, my atheist friends. But what happens is there's a disconnect between their thinking and their lifestyle. And the disconnect is, with the top of my head, I think it's all relative morally. But the way I live my life is, if you steal my stock portfolio, really evil. Let me give you one more example. A lot of people like to say to me, Cliff, God is love, which means God doesn't judge anybody. Everything's cool. Doesn't matter what you do. Okay. Let's say someone murders your mom and dad. They're hauled into a court of law. The judge says, you murdered this woman's mom and dad. Goodbye, have a great life. What is that saying? That is saying that your mom and dad do not matter. See, an understanding of sin means you do matter. And if somebody hurts you badly, it's really wrong. Why? Because you really matter. Well, why do you really matter? Not because you're an arrogant twit. Because you're a human being created in the image of God.
But, sorry to interrupt.
No, go.
I don't believe my value comes from something that is that God gives me.
Right.
My value is what I place on myself. And you're saying, what if someone murdered my parents, right?
Yes.
That does not take away their value for their lives, them being dead is not invaluable, is what you're saying, right?
Okay, but why are you valuable?
Well, because I place value on myself.
Okay, what's wrong with this? I'm the greatest.
There's nothing wrong with that to me, but
But am I the greatest?
If you believe you are, then you are.
Okay, I disagree. I think that if I go to the top of this building and really genuinely believe I can step off and fly, I am going to have a rude awakening as soon as I step off that building. Because I'm out of touch with reality.
Believing that you're great just in it of yourself without having something like God place that value upon yourself. It's like you believe it and you don't have to have something giving you that value. You just believe it.
Okay, good, but think about what you're saying. There is no God who created me. My number came up in a Monte Carlo game, a crapshoot. I'm an accident. Which means, what's the difference between stepping on a cockroach versus stepping on you? Cockroach is an accident, you're an accident.
Yeah.
So, you can stand there and tell me all day long, I have value, I have value, I have value.
Just like that cockroach has value.
Do you make a distinction between me stepping on a cockroach and me stepping on you?
I guess just because it's me and it's a cockroach, but that cockroach still has value.
Why don't you arrest people for killing cows and eating beef?
Because we're humans and we place value upon them. Just like we place values on ourselves, we place value on animals.
So if an alien race comes and starts wiping us off out of the picture and eating us like hamburger, would you have a problem with that?
They don't value us. They're aliens. I can't place value into them that they don't have in us. I can't convince them that we have value. They already think that.
But we don't have innate value if there
That's
is no
why.
God. It's just something we've created in our heads.
Exactly.
Okay, so then please don't be so arrogant to tell me that if I want to dump on him with a racist attitude, that's wrong. What do you mean? That's my choice. If I want to be racist towards him, that's my reality.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all.
I know you're not saying that, but follow the line of thinking, which is, if my value is just constructed by me, and his value is just constructed by him, and if I say to be racist to him is cool, that's my choice. Don't tell me I'm wrong, because you just have your choice. I got my choice.
It's different though,
I'm
because you have
jump in on this. You're kind of going everywhere. You're not answering her question. So
No, that would be wrong.
No, like
I am
you're
getting
saying-
to the root of the question, which is why is right right and why is wrong wrong? And I'm using different illustration, be it the cockroach and her, be it my racist attitude towards this gentleman, and she's maintaining consistently, and I respect your intellectual consistency. It's all just a matter of choice. Well, if it's all just a matter of choice, then if you step on a cockroach or if you step on her, I'm going to arrest you for both, and I'm going to try and have you held accountable for that, because that's my choice.
But you're kind of taking it away from the human aspect of it and
What does
putting it
that mean?
more on
The human aspect.
So
What's the
you're
difference
looking
between a
back at
human
her.
aspect and a cockroach aspect?
So bring your attention back to me.
I'm answering you head up, head to head.
What was the original
Eye contact,
question? What was your original question?
Why do you have to have God in your life to be a good person?
And I told you. What did I tell you first? You do not have to believe in God to be a good person. Remember, I told you all of my atheist friends do good things. I told you everybody does good things. In fact, I know that Adolf Hitler did good things because my dad was a little Boy Scout in Switzerland. And Adolf Hitler was coming through the Alps, and my dad met Adolf Hitler. And Adolf Hitler didn't slap my dad around. Adolf Hitler complimented my father for being in the Swiss Boy Scouts.
You say that everyone does good things, but that doesn't necessarily make them good people.
No, I didn't say that.
Because I asked, why do you need God to be a good person? And then you said everyone does good
And
things.
do good.
Yes.
So, and then I went on to explain. But if there is no God, good person is a totally relative category. What does that mean? It means goodness is a taste. Like, do you like the taste of corn or do you like the taste of beans? It's just a prejudice, just a taste. Culturally influenced, environmentally influenced, genetically influenced, whatever. It's just a taste. And I'm standing here saying you can't live that out because you know that to step on a cockroach is radically different from stepping on a baby. Because a human being has value, not because I happen to be a human being,
Right.
not because I give that baby value. False. That baby has innate, intrinsic, intrinsic value. Why? Because they're not pond scum evolved to a higher order. They're a human being created by God for a purpose, to love Him and to love each other.
And you're saying that I'm placing relative goodness into people, right? Like my term of goodness, because I don't believe in God, is relative. But you're saying that because of God, we have innate value. That's what you're saying.
Because He created us for a purpose,
Right.
correct.
So when you're saying because God created people, and because that's why they have values, because they created
They
them.
were created for a purpose.
Now you're saying that this God is like the status, right? He's what makes people good. But as humans, you can't really like know what God is thinking, right? So who's using that value? Who's saying, oh, like this is what's good and this is what's not good? It's the people in power, in religious power, because they're the ones interpreting God.
Really? Okay, these two guys believe in Jesus Christ, not because of people in power in religion as institutions. If these two guys believed in Jesus Christ because of powerful religious people, they'd be idiots. Because you know very well in this culture what religious institutions have done to people of African American heritage. These two brothers believe in Jesus Christ because they had the intellectual honesty to refuse to allow a white Christian racist or church or institution to turn them off to the true Jesus, who did not have a racist bone in his body, who in his first sermon in Luke 4 took a pot shot at racism and almost was killed for it. And so they don't allow white supremacists who call themselves Christians to turn them off to the true Jesus, who did not have a racist bone in his body. Does that make any sense?
That makes total sense. And I
Good.
mean, I applaud you guys for your like faith and stuff. But that's not my question. My question is, who decides what's good and right? If God is deciding it, right? But as humans, who's interpreting what's good and right? Like, who's
You
doing
bet.
that?
And remember, let's go reel it back. I told you first point, human conscience. I told you that all of my atheist friends, all of my Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim friends, all of my Christian, Jewish friends have consciences. Conscience is the innate moral ability to distinguish between good and evil, right and wrong. That's why we all experience guilt at some point. Because we have a conscience that says, Cliff, when you had that racist attitude towards Jeremiah, that was evil. That was wrong. And that's why I got to turn to Jeremiah and say, please, Jeremiah, would you forgive me for my racist attitude? So conscience is the first reason. Second of all, you've got to then ask the second question, well, what's the basis of conscience? Is it just environment influencing you? Cultural influences? And if it is just environment, if it is just culture, then it's totally relative. Because if my culture tells me that I am superior because I'm white and he's inferior because he's black, it's my culture. So who are you to come from somewhere outside my culture and tell me that my racist attitude towards him is wrong? It's all relative. But if there is a God who created him in his image, if there is a God who gives him an innate value, and if there is a God who created me for a purpose, to love and respect Jeremiah, not to degrade him, then my racist attitude is not wrong because of my culture or his culture or your culture. It's wrong because he has an innate value that comes from his creator. Does that make any sense?
That makes sense.
It's been an honor to talk with you. I like your persistence.
Okay. Thank you. You too.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
going back to conscience, are you saying God's your conscience?
No. God is not the conscience. The conscience is an innate ability that you have to say, that's right and that's wrong. It's tied into your rational.
So basically science, you know?
No. Clear illustration for you, okay? Science tells me that if I put strychnine in my grandma's tea, it will kill her. That's science. Does science answer the question, in light of how much money my grandma has, should I put strychnine in her tea in order to kill her to get her money, or should I not? Does science answer that question? No. Now we are moving from science to philosophy and ethics. The question, should I put strychnine in grandma's tea in order to kill her to get her money? That is not a scientific question. That is an ethical, philosophical question, a spiritual question. Does that make any sense?
Not really.
You really think science answers the question, should I put strychnine in my grandma's tea to get her money?
Isn't that just conscience like you were talking about? That's just
Well,
you
how does
thinking
science
about
answer that? What does science tell me to do?
Just your brain, like
Yeah.
the way you think. You know, that's just
Literally
you
saying
thinking.
What conscience is.
Bro, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah.
Like, can you not? I'm talking to the
Answer your own
pastor.
question.
Ma'am, I hate to tell you, science cannot answer the question, should you love her or hate her? Science does answer the question. You take out a knife and stick it in her, and she bleeds. She might bleed to death. Yes, that's obvious. That's a physical, material, scientific question. It includes, obviously, medical knowledge. Okay? But the question, should you stick a knife in her or not? It's not a scientific question, guys. And that's why when you say, I live for science, you can't live it out. You can't. Should you pay your taxes or not? Science doesn't tell you.
So why, like, you're saying, okay, God, this, and that, and they believe that too, but a religious person, I don't know. So I'm a little confused on like
Okay,
where
good.
you're going with that.
Good. It's real simple. Let's see if I can express it. God gave me a conscience, but he also gave me a free will. And God has said, I am not to stick him with a knife and murder him. But because I have a free will, I can descend to the position of saying, I'm going to murder you. Bam. That's not because of God. It's not because of conscience. It's because of my free will, my choosing to sear my conscience and knife him instead of love and respect him the way God created me to love and respect him. But now what Jesus says is, Cliff, you're free to knife him. Guess what? You're not free to escape the day of judgment, when the all-knowing God will hold you responsible for sticking a knife in him. And that's why I need Jesus Christ. Because no, I haven't knifed people, but I have hated people. No, I've never stolen a bunch of money from a bank, but I have been greedy. So I need forgiveness because I've done wrong. And my conscience convicts me by guilt. And I say, whoa, what did I do to that person? That was wrong. And I can self-reflect. I can know myself. I can judge myself, critique myself.
Right. And that's like really good. And so what I think about religion is that it's good for people who need it to be able to reflect upon themselves. You know, like I think that people should be able to do that, but some people can't without having religion. So that's how I
Okay.
say.
I mean,
Sometimes gotta skank around.
I mean, I am.
And you've heard loud and clear, I hope, what I've said to you, which is, you can do good, be you atheist, agnostic, whatever, Buddhist, Hindu, Christian, Jew. But if you're an atheist, you cannot say they're objective morals. Instead, you got to say they're subjective morals, relative morality. See, I could never use this argument with a Muslim, because a Muslim and I agree. There are objective morals that come from God, from Allah. So with a Muslim, this is not part of the discussion. Rather, it is part of the discussion when I'm talking to agnostics or atheists. Because remember I told you, all of my atheist friends do very good things at times.
Right.
Remember that?
Yeah, you said it doesn't align with their thinking.
Correct. And if I have a thinking, a worldview, that is majorly contradicted by the way I experience life, see what I'm trying to do with you? I'm trying to say, okay, you can't live out what you believe. Should you not go back and re-examine what you believe? Because such a big part of reality, your conscience, your understanding that there are some objective morals, maybe not many, but the abuse of an innocent child would be an example that that's never, ever good. That demands there to be human value that's real and objective, not just because I'm great or I'm the best. I've been created by God and given value by God. Therefore, for me to abuse an innocent child is absolutely wrong.
So is it being an atheist that gives that gap, or is it just that person that has that gap of like following what their morals are? Because I have my morals and I stick by them.
Good.
Is it being an atheist that makes them that makes them have that gap between their moral and their living their life?
Okay.
Or is it just that person in itself?
Okay, now, what I'm pleading with you is, I respect you living good life. I respect you for having moral standards that you do not compromise. Awesome. Now, allow your conviction, and you got a conviction. If you're not going to sacrifice your morals and compromise them, you know that you got some convictions. Don't you think that those convictions are tying you into reality? That there are some moral absolutes, and you hold very tightly to them. And so what I'm suggesting is, now you got to take a second step, which is, why? Why are those morals real and objective? There's only one way they can be real and objective, is if there is some mind prior to the human mind who creates and defines them and who gives people real value, and therefore you better not devalue them, you better respect them. Does that make any sense?
That makes sense.
Thank you for joining us for these few minutes. We'd like to personally invite you Sunday mornings to St. Paul's Episcopal Church, located in Darien at 9 a.m., or to Grace Farms at 10 a.m. in New Canaan, Connecticut. Check us out more online at www.gracecommunity.info to learn more.